Hello, everyone. It is me, Dora, again with your next episode of your MildyCon Roll Call. Today, we have a special guest, one of our very own from REF Mildenhall. We're going to be talking about his experiences with Dungeons and Dragons, RPGs in general, and how you were introduced to this game. So, who are you? Tell us a bit about yourself.
I am Austin Denny, and I've been here at Mildenhall for a long period of time now. Originally kid out of the Midwest area, North Texas area, and yeah, that's pretty much it as far as I'm concerned.
Yep, excellent. So tell me about how you got into Dungeons and Dragons. Is that the primary tabletop RPG that you play, or have you played other systems as well?
Yes. So growing up, kids in various different clubs and functions in high school and that sort of thing, and extracurriculars at local YMCA or just Boys and Girls Club, that sort of thing. There'd be folks who were playing Vampire the Masquerade or regular old Dungeons and Dragons, and it was always kind of associated with this geeky culture. And I know it's kind of weird to separate nerds from geeks when there's really not a whole lot of a divide. But it was never something that kind of vibed with me, which was odd because growing up, I always was the kind of person to play with figurines, action figures, dolls, whichever, and just create a scenario in my head. You've got this bad guy, you've got the good guys, and they're going to go take them out. My first time playing it was actually when I got here. One of my compatriots, who has left recently, but he actually suggested that, hey, we're going to do this thing at home. It'd be great to have you there, just kind of get used to everybody here in the shop and just play the game and see how much you like it. And I wasn't under the impression that it was going to be something that was like huge, magnanimous. It was literally just playing the game. And then I got there and I was like, oh, I want my character to have this accent, like they have this sort of backstory, this half elf ranger. I forget the name at this point, but he actually was killed during that session by a gnoll.
No.
He was cleaved in half. And I was very upset.
You died your first.
I died my first time.
D&D.
But I also didn't know what was going on. I didn't know how mechanics were done. It was just kind of throw you right into the frying pan. Skip the fire, so right into the frying pan. And I was a
best way to
crispy piece of bacon at that point. But it was so fun. And then that was my first instance. And I was a little upset by the outcome of it.
I was about to say, how did you feel walking away from that?
I kind of reacted to it poorly, if I'm being honest.
Okay.
I just kind of got up, grabbed my things, and said, well, see you guys later. Got into my car, and as I was driving, I was listening to this group called The Civil Wars, and they've got this kind of folky country vibe, but it was like this super somber song that had nothing to do with the scenario.
Oh, no.
And I did the thing where you look out the window, it starts raining, and you think you're in a music video for, I don't know.
Just mourning the loss of your first character.
Exactly. So that was my first experience with it.
Okay, so first experience, definitely not necessarily a positive one.
It did get better over time, though.
It did? Okay, that was my next question. Yeah. What was your second and third experience like? Because you've mentioned before that you grew up enjoying coming up with stories.
Absolutely.
And that is definitely a huge part of this kind of game, as well as other tabletop RPG sorts of styles of systems. So, how did you come back to it?
Mm-hmm.
How much time passed between that first traumatic experience to the next one?
So I went online to talk about how do you deal with player deaths and such, and I was reading articles about people who did one shots. They're like, oh, it's not like a huge deal. You have like this random Tabaxi monk and they died. Big whoop. You just make another one.
For those of you who haven't played this before, Tabaxi is a cat person.
It is. They walk on their hind legs and they speak common and another language if they really want to.
Yeah. Check out some of the upcoming table tips videos if you need to learn more about the specifics of D&D.
Boom. A couple weeks went by and I had an idea about, well, what if we played again, but he had like a brother, and now he has this revenge plot. He's gonna go find this gnoll. He's gonna kill this gnoll. He's gonna wear it as a cape kind of garment thing or something. I don't know.
You've avenged your brother.
Or at least take the sword that his ranger brother had and just use it as the killing blow for this gnoll.
Yeah.
And with work, especially in our line of work, shift work is difficult. So it was taxing to figure out a good time and a good date for everybody to meet up together and run through.
It's always a challenge.
Section. It really is. It really is. But then he left. He had to move to a different place. So I was sitting there thinking, man, I got to go find another group to play with.
Mm-hmm.
And then somebody proposed the idea that I DM something. And I was thinking to myself, yeah, I could do it, right?
Sure.
And just kind of walk in right into the saddle.
Yeah.
No. I was completely out of my depth at that point.
But a lot of DMs start that way.
Absolutely.
You end up being put into this position where people want to play, but no one really wants to run the game.
Exactly.
Your first few sessions as your DM is Dungeon Master or Game Master, if you want to use a more system agnostic term. The first few sessions are horrifying because you're learning the rules.
Mm-hmm.
Now from, as we say, the other side of the screen, a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
You are creating this story. You're not sure if the players are going to like it or not. So how was that? How was that experience for you?
It was tough. I make no illusions towards it. GMing, DMing, whichever you do, is tough because it's with anything. You ask 10 different people how to play it, and they're going to give you 10 different answers. Some people want to completely prepare for every single random encounter and main encounter to the last letter.
Right.
And there's no wiggle room. And then some DMs fly by the seat of their pants. They just do it on the spot. Their character says, I'm going to go do this thing. And in their head, they just go, okay, they investigate this cavern. And you found this random mimic. And it's hoarding this sword that you've been told about. And you have to go get it now. Yeah. And then some folks do it half and half. But that's kind of where I fall. Mm-hmm. After my first session, which was mostly trying to figure out how you're going to get all of your players who have created these fairly intimate backstories with themselves,
right,
and get them all into the same place and unite them somehow. Mm-hmm. The first session a couple of years ago with that was rough because I did not know what I was doing. I had no idea. Right. What is a pantheon of gods for? I only know of like a few of them, and I don't really know anything about their theology. I know nothing about this land. Right. What about architecture, people?
You have to create so much from scratch, unless you're using one of the pre-published adventures that are out there.
Absolutely, and actually, that's how we did it at first. Mm-hmm. We used pre-published content from Wizards of the Coast. I believe it was The Lost Mines of Phandelver.
That's a great one to start with.
I had no idea what I was doing. Absolutely zero. I was just like, this sounds kind of cool. And we just went right with it. And it is also a struggle with gauging how many people are going to be in your group for each session. Because I think we start off with like 8 people.
That's a pretty good sized table.
Somebody gave me the weird like oogly eye, oogly pie. And they were like, why 8 people? You could have just done 4 or 5. Yeah. And I said, what, 8's a bad number? And they're like, well, it's just, your combat's going to be really slow.
That's more than you usually have. The typical table is going to have anywhere between 4 or 5, maybe 6 people. More than that, you have a lot of moving pieces that you have to try to keep straight.
And that's another aspect we'll get to later, hopefully. Yeah. And there were some people who were really into it in the role-playing aspect. Mm-hmm. There was people who were more invested in the DPS aspect, and then there were some people
DPS.
Damage per second. Sorry. My apologies. They were worried about numbers and how they could utilize their attacks to get the most efficient damage on their enemy.
A lot of people will come into this sort of game having played role-playing games in a video game format, like a computer role-playing game, CRPG, where it is very much a numbers game. So how did you handle that with the players at your table? Because D&D, depending on how you play it, it could be more of a numbers monster hunting simulator sort of game, or it could be more narrative. And it sounds like, from the things that you've mentioned before, one of the things that really draws you into this game is the storytelling aspect.
Absolutely.
So whether as a player at the table or as the dungeon master, how do you shift those expectations?
I understand that role-playing is not for everybody. Mm-hmm. There are people who are timid, and that's okay. They're not used to that sort of thing. I never require it in my groups. I let them know as the DM that I will be performing to the best of my ability, to at least give them an idea of how this non-player character functions.
We're trying to be good about these acronyms, folks.
I will say it, and then I'll use the acronym from then on, hopefully. But getting a gauge as to what that individual they're interacting with is like.
Yeah.
Same thing with architecture, landscaping. If they are coming across an area that their character hasn't seen before, I want to give them a good gauge at saying it's a desolate town with ramshackle buildings, kind of accordion folding on top of each other.
You want to paint that picture.
Exactly. There's a tumbleweed that just kind of like rolls by, and you swear you hear the wah, 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 harmonica.
Do you use sound effects and music in your games?
Sometimes
people do.
Sometimes. So when we do our sessions, it's a bit difficult. When they were in person, pre-COVID, as they would say, we would do music out the wazoo. We had rain sounds, we had thunderstorms, we had crickets, we had battle music, and we all picked one song for each character. That was the when you get the final blow on like a theme song, the big bad enemy guy. We would play that song, and it would be like,
that's pretty cool.
And then people would get excited, be like, wait, that's my song. Oh, did I do the thing? And then I'd be like, yeah, you did the thing. So how are you going to go about this? You're landing the final blow on this character. How are you going to do it? And then they describe it.
That's a pretty cool way to make that moment seem even more special, even more memorable for the players.
What's crazy is, that idea was inspired by Matthew Mercer from Critical Role. They have the catchphrase of, how do you want to do this?
Yeah.
And I wanted to incorporate something like that without saying, how do you want to do this? Even though that phrase is kind of common in our lexicon. So I thought the idea of just any song that would resonate with that character was meaningful to them. And then it would play whenever they did that sort of thing. Yeah.
That's awesome. So with all these different things that you've incorporated into the game, the things that you've learned along the way from that first session as a player around the table, losing this character that you spent so much time into, building this backstory, and then evolving into a dungeon master in your own right. What kind of advice would you have for someone who's either trying to get into the game for the first time or wanting to make that leap from player to dungeon master?
So for a person who's getting involved with it the first time, I'd say, number one, have fun. Absolutely. If you're not having fun, then what's the point of doing anything? But
words to live by.
Absolutely. But if you go into it thinking that you're going to be this awesome hero of the realm off the cuff, it's kind of a reality check. You have to take the first step like you would with any other game, and then build that character from there. But yeah, definitely have fun. Take it slow. Don't try to meta game, as they would say, or don't try to outsmart the game. Just enjoy it for what it's coming at you as. As far as players who are transitioning from the player character to the actual dungeon mastering, I would say be patient with the storytelling elements that you're providing to your characters, because you know the information, but they don't. So give them the opportunity to go through about that. Don't unless it's agreed upon, don't go into it thinking I'm going to just try to kill all of your characters, because these are characters that people.
It's not like a player versus dungeon master dynamic, is it? It's
my job isn't to kill you.
Yeah,
my job isn't to kill you. My job is to explain to you what's happening around you, the stimulus that is occurring with your characters and the other characters around yours, and then whatever you encounter, the world or the beings that inhabit it itself. And I'm just here to tell you what happens with it.
Right. Facilitating that story.
Exactly. Now, there may be like a couple times where I'll throw something at you being like, I want to see how you handle this fight against some Udak or something like that.
Yeah.
By the way, if you've faced some Udak before, let me know how you did it, because it's terrifying. It's Google. It's crazy. UDAAK. Terrifying.
I would not want to run into one of those. Awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming on to the show and sharing a little bit about your experiences with this game and a little bit of advice for folks as well.
Sure.
Hopefully we'll have you on again soon. When's your next game? What's next in store for your players?
So it's actually tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
It's an international.
At the time of this recording.
Yeah, exactly. It's an international game played with players both here as well as CONUS, or in the continental United States. It's not a homebrew. It's a game inspired by Matt Mercer's Exandria.
Okay.
I just am supplanting those characters in there, and recently they've had an encounter with a member known as the Silver Raven.
Mm-hmm.
They've detained him and discovered that he is the illegitimate son of a shop owner and one of the guardsmen, and
Okay.
they were arrested with him. They've found shelter in a place called the Lucky Griffin Inn, which was inspired by a TikTok member on the TikTok app. It's actually an NPC that he created.
Okay.
And they've been trying to discover more about each other over time. One of the characters in particular, his name is Troll, spelled TR011.
Oh no.
Is a Warforged.
Oh. Okay.
But he got
Troll.
He got into an altercation with one of the party members, and in the repair process discovered that he actually has a working heart and brain.
Okay.
Which is like a not.
Hopefully, we're not giving away spoilers.
No, they know this.
Okay.
Now they're trying to figure out why. They also have to attend the trial for the member that they just picked up, and there's a couple other fun tidbits, personal quests, visions that they've all had about stuff that's happening in the world that personally affects them.
Yeah.
And mostly just kind of laying the plot points and seeing which one they're going to go after, and then I can go, okay, they're focusing on this path.
Yep. You're laying the crumbs. Integrating different things for each character.
And I'm just the witch in the woods trying to get you to go in the oven.
Excellent. Well, awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
And again, thank you for coming on to our first MildyCon roll call interview. And I wish you all the best on your adventures.
Thank you very much.
Bump. All right, everyone. Hope you enjoyed that. Stay tuned for the next interview coming up soon. And have a wonderful day.